Wonderful. So good afternoon, Queens. Welcome to the first conversation of the Reine Collective's Mindfulness series. I am Kimberly Gilbert. I am a co-founder of Reine Collective and one of your hosts for this evening. Right, my co-founder Shanice Webb will be joining us shortly to introduce and to converse with our first speaker this evening. For those of you who may not know, Laren Collective, it is a community-focused company. We provide a safe and welcoming space for women to connect, to learn, and to grow. So our journey began during the pandemic. We noticed that there is a need for community because, when I speak to all of my friends individually, realize that we're going through the same thing. So why not come together and really start to touch on our self-care and our wellness and really grow in that space with each other. So at Reine Collective, we do believe that every woman deserves to feel empowered, to feel supported, and not just feel, but be empowered and be supported. And that's why we host both online and in-person events. And these allow our members to connect with each other, to share the different experiences, to learn from the experts in the wellness industry. And we have two of them with us here today. We are at Reine are just passionate really about creating a community that is inclusive, that is diverse, that is empowering, and we really welcome women of all ages, all races, and all backgrounds. And our focus more so is on building that meaningful relationships, and we're fostering a very supportive environment that encourages personal growth and self-care. So we are here today to really start and get the ball rolling and do more of that type of wellness and holistic work that we do. I would love at this time to introduce you all to Shanice Webb, my co-founder, my fellow co-founder of Reine Collective. Shanice?
Hi, good afternoon to all the queens that are part of this session today and those who may view the session later on. I'm really happy and ecstatic to be here today and to really be able to share with you a bit of like who Reine is, what we're passionate about, and also in terms of this mindfulness series that we are embarking on, right? So we all know as adults, as young women, and even older women, life sometimes really be putting us through it. We all face different challenges, whether we are mothers or child-free, whether we are students, full-time workers, entrepreneurs, we all experience different challenges in this thing called life. And mindfulness really is just one of the tools, right, that we can use to really be present and understand, okay, yes, we are facing challenges, but to really take those things and understand how we feel without judgment and be able to create practices in our lives that help us to manage and deal with these challenges as they come along, right? So really with this mindfulness series is really for us to take a wellness journey, right? Like no other. And we really want to be able to explore the idea of mindfulness when it comes to the 8 dimensions of wellness, right? So this includes physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, environmental, financial, and occupational wellness, right? So over the course of the next couple of months, we really want to dive deep into these topics and really tackle the different issues that may arise and how mindfulness can be a tool to assist us in really fully addressing these things, right? And and really speaking back to the core of who Reine is, we are community first, and lots of the topics that we will seek to address would really be topics that came out of the community itself, right? So without any further ado, we would really like to dive into today's conversation. And our first speaker is none other than one of our, inaugural Reine members, Miss Alyssa Moore. She is a beautiful mom and sister and friend. She is a researcher at heart, and she works at the Caribbean Center for Health Systems Research and Development at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. She also holds her master's in psychology, right, and health psychology, and really is interested in health and behavioral change interventions, right? So Alyssa is really interested in women's health, and she's currently pursuing becoming a postpartum doula. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Alyssa as she shares her presentation with us this afternoon, and we learn more from her today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction. I am just about to share my screen with you. Give me 1 minute. Right. Okay, so everyone can see my screen. Okay, so today I would like to discuss with you a topic that is dear to my heart, which is mindfulness and the postpartum experience, and exploring mindfulness in motherhood. Right. So let's start with what is mindfulness. An easy definition that I found was that mindfulness is maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of our thoughts, bodily sensations, and our surrounding environment through a gentle and nurturing lens. Before I begin, I would like you to watch this very short video and try the exercise and pay attention to how it makes you feel before we go on.
So often we're caught up in life's demands with no time to stop, but becoming more aware of your own thoughts and feelings and what's around you, and accepting the present moment can help improve your mental health and well-being. Doing this affects both the mental and the physical you. Some people call this being more mindful. Focusing on the present means paying attention to your thoughts and feelings right here, right now. Breathing exercises are a great way to focus on the present and be more mindful. Doing this can also help when you're feeling stressed or anxious. This short video will take you through how to do a mindful breathing exercise. Firstly, settle into a natural, comfortable position. When you're ready, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Breathe naturally, noticing the sensations of the breath entering and leaving the body as best you can. Allow your shoulders and neck to relax, focusing on your breathing, just being aware of it. Focus on how your body feels. What sensations do you notice? Do you feel your feet on the floor or the feeling of your clothes on your skin? Take this time to pay close attention to physical sensations, from the top of your head right down to your toes. Notice what you're thinking about right now and how you're feeling. Just take the time to notice your thoughts and feelings without judgment and without trying to change them. When you're ready, take one more breath and try to bring this awareness with you into the next moments of your day. Breathing techniques like this one can help to center you in the moment at any time and connect you with the present, which can help if you're feeling stressed or anxious.
Okay, so that was a pretty short exercise, and I hope that it has given you a little understanding or a little introduction to mindfulness. I think a lot of us, when we think about mindfulness, we think about meditation and breathing and paying attention to our breath. But mindfulness could be so much more than that. Mindfulness could be a way that we can approach life. And why use mindfulness? Why is mindfulness practice important, especially in the context of mothers, and in my specific context in this presentation, postpartum? The evidence has shown that mindfulness together with the use of CBT, which is a form of talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, where your therapist will help you to rationalize your negative thoughts and behaviors and challenge them and reframe them more rationally, because not all the time, the negative thoughts that we have are founded in truth or are healthy for us even. So together, researchers would have introduced mindfulness practice and CBT to postpartum mothers, and they found that it reduced the risk of depression in postpartum mothers. It decreased psychological distress, depression, and anxiety. And they also found that 10 to 20 minutes of daily mindfulness practice improved depression symptoms and perceived stress. And also, very importantly, it increased maternal self-efficacy, and that would mean it increased mothers' confidence to be able to take care of their babies or mother their babies effectively, and it also increased mothers' well-being. And you may wonder, then how does mindfulness look during postpartum? Well, first we'll have to think about what is happening in the postpartum period to the mother. There are lots of things that may or may not happen to you when you become a mother. You have symptoms such as mood swings, anxiety, depression. Some people may experience depression. Some people may just experience baby blues. And for every mother in that time of transition, there are lots of changing hormonal levels, which would affect your experience. You have a new human that you have to take care of, and you have sleeping, feeding, and changing schedules. You have the responsibility of a newborn, and for some, just the idea of that responsibility is very overwhelming. You're learning to breastfeed, which from experience and from other moms can sometimes be really painful. So that's another thing. And I won't list them all because these are just some among a lot of things that are happening or may not happen to a mother when she has a child. And what mindfulness allows us to do is to become aware of that experience that we're in, to become aware of what is going on with us physically, psychologically, and also in our environment and socially, and to see it and appraise it for what it is, not judging ourselves, and also acknowledging the thoughts that we're having. As well, it's good to help us set a space to start processing experiences that may have happened before we became mothers, before we gave birth. Sometimes we may have traumatic birth experiences. Sometimes there may have been difficulty within our labor. So everything that is going on with us in that moment, mindfulness allows us to be aware of. And then it takes us to what can we do? So what does mindfulness look like during the postpartum period? Mindfulness can look like acknowledging how your pregnancy and birth experience has affected you. Using mindfulness to contextualize your postpartum experience in a healthier way. how I can explain that is, well, before I talked about how sometimes we can have negative thoughts. During our mindfulness practice, whether we're using the breath to be aware of ourselves, whether we're paying attention to our thoughts without judgment, sometimes we notice thoughts that are negative, that are hurtful to us, and we choose not to judge ourselves in those moments, but take note of those thoughts. Sometimes it may be that I am fat. It could be that I hate my body right now. It could be that I am not good at this. I don't know what to do for this baby. This baby is crying continuously and I feel like a failure. And when we acknowledge those thoughts, we can then in that mindfulness mindset, approach ourselves from a compassionate position. And it's not something that some of us can do alone, that we may need support to, but as we have those thoughts, we can voice them to somebody we trust who can help us to bring those thoughts to reality, because sometimes, like I said before, they may not be true. Sometimes they may not be healthy. Sometimes the way that we're thinking about ourselves may be putting us in a negative place. Another thing that serves to put us in a negative space is that sometimes we seem to have a snapback culture versus a healing culture. And we tend to watch celebrities and other women and think that because we are not recovering or healing in the same way that they are, that something is wrong with us. And mindfulness allows us to see ourselves, understand where we are, that we're healing, understand all that is going on with us, and be able to be compassionate with ourselves and nurture ourselves based on that understanding. Another thing that mindfulness can look like is developing a birth plan. Preparation when it comes to birth and motherhood is key. Preparation and knowledge. Knowledge helps to dispel negative thoughts. It also helps to dispel fear. And fear is also connected to pain. And that's not something that I'm not able to go into now, but education, knowledge about a situation and the ability to prepare properly for it. And then also not just to include, because we tend to think about birth. We tend to think about birth and we think about having a baby, and we tend to prepare for the baby, but it's also very important to prepare for ourselves and what happens after. So another thing coming out of that preparation, one thing that we can include in our preparation or facilitator to mindfulness is using traditions, postpartum care traditions and rituals to support and facilitate our mindfulness practice. Around the world, everywhere in the world, for centuries, there has been, in different communities, postpartum care traditions. And one thing that has been specific to all of them, or one thing that they all include, support to the mother, periods of rest, prescribed food to be eaten or prohibited, hygienic practices, and also infant care and breastfeeding. And these usually would include mothers, mother-in-laws, and a tight-knit support group that would provide care to the mother. This also allows mothers to rest, relax. It also acknowledges what your mindfulness practice would acknowledge, where you are, and the fact that you need nurturing and care. Not all the time in our new and changing society, our mothers and mother-in-laws and likewise are able to support us in this way. And that's where we, postpartum doulas, would step in and providing families with information and support around these topics. Physical and emotional support. Postpartum doula services can look like belly binding, bone closing, nutrition, postpartum meals, womb steaming, and breastfeeding support and herbal baths. And all of this serves to support the physiological transition into motherhood, and as well as the psychological impact of becoming a mother. All in all, my main point is that we can use postpartum rituals to acknowledge and validate our present condition of becoming a new mother. And these traditions may help mothers to, moment by moment, be aware of their thoughts, bodily sensations, and surrounding environment, looking at themselves to a gentle, nurturing lens. I think I may have gone over time. I'm sorry that I started rushing in the end. To finish off, I would like to provide you with some resources. Reine is in support of women, and I would like to support these women who have been really instrumental to me and can be of service to you if you are interested in becoming a mother, you have a friend who is a mother. Janelle Leo Boyd is my trainer in becoming a postpartum doula. She's a birth educator, an excellent informational resource. Janine Newton, she's based here in Trinidad and Tobago. Bump to Baby, she's a birth educator and a birth doula. Excellent educational resource, as well as what her portfolio includes. Kershel Graves, Parcels of Love, she prepares pre-filled maternity bags and offers postpartum recovery essentials. And if you are looking for a postpartum doula, you can look with the Doula Alliance of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so very much for listening. I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. That has been so informative. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like we need a whole hour just to kind of dive deeper, right? I saw a comment here from Yashi Carrington. She said that Janine was my doula and she was awesome.
Yeah, she's
right?
amazing.
So we will be sharing the resources that Alyssa shared with everyone. So once you sign up with us, we would forward it via email, right? So just to get into some questions, if persons have questions, please put them in the comment section, and I will ask Alyssa as I have some questions for you as well, right? So my first question is, what inspired you to be a doula, and how has a postpartum doula, and how has your own motherhood journey informed that process?
I think the answer to both of those questions are one and the same. I didn't know what a postpartum doula was until I became a mother. I was prepared for birth. I had an amazing birth. And then I felt like I got dropped into something that I was not properly prepared for. I felt like postpartum was a best kept secret initiation. And I really wasn't. I had prepared myself in some ways, I won't lie. The father of my baby boy, he and a friend prepackaged lunch meals for me, and they were in the freezer. I had looked up what I would need for postpartum, and I had created my witch hazel and aloe vera pads, and like I thought I was getting ready. And then I'm a researcher, so I just look up things, and I came across diastasis recti, and something in my gut. I had a feeling like, oh, I should ask about this. And I asked my gynecologist about it. And she said, don't worry, you have strong abs, young, not gonna happen to you. And when I became a mother, it did happen to me.
Right.
And I had the negative thinking of, it was my fault. I called it on myself. Why was I looking it up? Why was I asking about it? And then I had to work through that. And in working through that, I came across pages of women who were going through the same things. And then from my education, the same reason I went into psychology and then health psychology is because I'm a personality that likes to fill needs. So I saw a need now. It was a need that I had, and I realized it was a need that other mothers had. So I was like, okay, how can I fill that need? And that's when I started trying to figure out how I could become a postpartum doula.
Wow. I guess a negative turns into something, I guess, positive, all things work together, for your good in the end. And I guess based on your experience, what do you think you would have needed to be more prepared for your postpartum journey?
I think I would have needed more information on how to prepare. I think with something like this, preparation is really important, because when you're in it, it's hard to just now be trying to figure out what you're going to do. I needed more people who knew as well. And I can't blame them. I really can't. You can't, because I wouldn't say I didn't have support. I had all the support that the people around me knew to give me.
Right.
So I think educated support.
Right.
Is what I think I needed. And that's what I want to be able to provide to my friends, my family, and anybody.
Right. So I guess in a sense, you needed a team of persons, somewhat like when you have a business, you need a team of professionals, you need your accountant, you need your lawyer, you need whatever. But I think when it comes to giving birth, you need that team of people that could give you that support, whether it's from, conventional medicine, but also that traditional aspect as well, in terms of, you shared about like the different things like the belly binding and all of that, is also important as well. So one of the things when it comes to mindfulness is really big on compassion for yourself, compassion for, the things that you're experiencing, and not necessarily being judgmental, right? And I feel like when it comes to women, especially pregnant women or women who just had children, a lot of time, yes, persons may have compassion, but only for a certain amount of time, but not necessarily understanding that the postpartum experience or journey is a bit longer than we expect. It may be longer than the typical 3 months or 6 months, So what is your role in terms of creating that awareness, not just with the mother, but also the partner and their community around how do you show compassion for her and the things that she's experiencing, and maybe even the things that the other partner is experiencing along the way as well?
Generally, doulas support the family, not just the mother, and help them figure out ways that they can support the mother. And one of the things that doulas are involved in is integrating children if there is already a child in the home. Community, I'm not saying you need a doula. That's not the message, because not everybody could afford a doula. Not everybody, it's in their budget. It wasn't in mine. But have a community of people. So going back to your birth plan, the same way you would plan where you want to have birth. If this happens, what is your plan B? What would you want for yourself? You want to include that when you're planning for your birth. You want to include, okay, who is my community? Who are my friends? What family members do I have that are going to support me? And see if you could get them to commit. So, when are you gonna come? Because especially in that early time, mothers being alone for a long period of time is also linked to depression and anxiety, new mothers. So you want to know who is going to come and check me? Maybe somebody's going to come and check you after work on a Tuesday and they could commit to that. Maybe somebody is going to help provide you with meals. Maybe somebody is going to just come and sit with you and hear what you have to say. Maybe somebody is going to provide some of the things that you need, but you need to see, as much as possible, try to identify those people. That's from the standpoint of the mother. From the standpoint of persons who want to support mothers, what I do is that since I became a mother, I do not buy baby shower gifts for the baby. I always get something for the mother. And usually when I do that, I would get the response that tells me that wasn't on her list. That wasn't something that she thought about. She was thinking about her baby. And then when the baby is born, sometimes I would get a message or I would see a Instagram post or something saying, oh my gosh, thank you for that sitz bath, because they didn't know how much they would need it. So it's about anticipating, learning. That's a way that we can love the people around us, is trying to get information, because as much as I have experienced, mothers don't think of themselves as much as they're thinking about their baby entering this process. So it's the responsibility of their community to think about them.
Yes. So thank you so much. That's, I think, an excellent wind up of this session. And it's really important that we continue to learn about motherhood, even for persons who, may already had their first child, or maybe diastasis erecta is not something that they had, and maybe something that happened with their second birth. So thank you so much. It's very informative. And I would hand over to Kimberly for our next speaker.
Thank you so much. That was such a rich discussion. And I see some comments in the chat where Kalisha was expressing that, this has been her experience as well. And then Chelsea supporting, of course, that, there is some sort of consideration and thought about the mother. So this is excellent, because we're rolling into Chelsea's segment right now. So Chelsea Storm de Mayak, she is a practicing therapist in Trinidad and Tobago. She holds a master's degree in clinical social work and is passionate about supporting others and their mental health, their relationship concerns, as well as their communication skills. Her topic today is really shining light on postpartum anxiety, normalizing birth anxiousness, and debunking intrusive thoughts. And I must say, when I had the initial conversation with Chelsea, that part of intrusive thoughts really struck home for me, because someone who, like myself, who's not a mom as yet, I get that. And so I could imagine the extra care and the extra thoughts and anxiety that really comes around birth. So, Chelsea, thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kim, for that very warm opening, and thank you for inviting me to this session. I was actually, I kind of asked to be part of the session because I was having a conversation with Kimberly and Shanice, and when they explained what the session was about, I was like, oh my goodness, I have a subject that I feel is not spoken about, and I would love to shine light on that. So I'm very grateful that space was created for me to bring forth something that I'm very passionate about. And so to piggyback off of Alyssa's share, and by the way, Alyssa, I loved your presentation. I loved the call to action for nurturing mothers as they nurture their children, as that is such a forgotten value. Thank you for drawing light to that and also sharing your birthing experience. And so for me, my segment specifically is on anxiety. And I feel near and dear to this as someone who's experienced anxiety on and off again in my own life. And so I wanted to weave that in specifically to the postpartum experience. My presentation is a little old school. I have some notes. So if you see me glancing down, that's what I'm doing. Okay. So as Alyssa had shared, giving birth is a very vulnerable time for a woman. And in my perspective, is one of the highest calls of honor of a human being can do in their lifetime is to bring forth new life. And with that comes obviously tremendous responsibility, as well as a tremendous burden in terms of the physical and emotional side of that experience. And so the experience of mental health, I'm grateful that that conversation is now opening up more and more. We hear this like tagline of postpartum depression, and thank goodness that is finally getting the recognition that it deserves. And I'm going to drop into even more nuanced level of the postpartum mental health experience, or the possible, because not every woman experiences this, but around the experience of postpartum anxiety specifically. So I have a couple notes here and I don't want to miss anything. So some symptoms or possible symptoms of postpartum anxiety is constant worry and dread, feeling on edge and just feeling this like looming sense of doom, excessive worry about being a good parent, having racing thoughts, being irritable, lacking sleep, lacking appetite, as well as the experience of intrusive thoughts and or what we call postpartum OCD. And so I want to give a little bit of a distinction here for educational purposes around what is the distinction between postpartum OCD, right, which is considered an anxiety disorder, versus postpartum generalized anxiety, because there is some overlap. And there are so many parallels. I'm going to try my best to conceptualize what the difference is. Postpartum anxiety, just generalized anxiety, is characterized by a generalized sense of anxiety. So again, just feeling off, feeling that like anxiousness in your body, and having those types of thoughts, like Alyssa drawn attention to, things like, am I being a good mom? Am I gonna like being a mom? Am I ignoring my first child? Maybe if it's a second child, is my lover still gonna find me attractive with my new body? So all of those things are considered like generalized postpartum anxiety. And generalized postpartum anxiety does really well in terms of support, like traditional therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, which Alyssa drew attention to, which is essentially the process of having a therapist support you in identifying and reframing some of these untrue and problematic thoughts, because our brains sometimes tell us lies and we can't believe everything we think. But when you're in a state of anxiety, it's really hard to pull that apart. And so that is supportive for generalized anxiety, which can happen in the postpartum experience. And now I'm going to drop in a level deeper, which is talking about postpartum OCD. And as a mental health professional, I will say, in my perspective, OCD and intrusive thoughts are the most unrepresented mental health disorder and the most misunderstood mental health disorder. Even I, who have gone through an entire master's program, I'm embarrassed to say this, but it's a testament of our education system. I left my master's program thinking OCD was like flipping on light switches, washing your hands excessively, and like, that's OCD, all of those compulsions. I was like, that's it. And then when I really learned about intrusive thoughts as a function of OCD, it completely expanded my perspective. And I will also say this, society doesn't help that misinterpretation, because we say things like, if somebody's being color coordinated, or you're being so OCD, or if someone's being very meticulous with time, or you're being so meticulous with OCD. So we in society feel this misconception by using phrasing like that, when that is actually not OCD. Like, it is for a small population of people who have OCD, but that is not representative of the entire spectrum of what OCD means. So let's bring it back down to postpartum. So intrusive thoughts are scary, unwanted thoughts that a person may have that induces a high sense of anxiety. And this is a function of OCD. And what happens is that a person has these scary, unwanted, intrusive thoughts, and that lends itself to the compulsions. That's what society is a little bit familiar with, right? But what we miss out on completely is that the compulsions are a response to intrusive thoughts. So let's talk about what intrusive thoughts are and how that shows up specifically in the postpartum experience. So I want to really make this clear. Intrusive thoughts go against a person's value system, and that's why they're so scary. And that's why it's under the umbrella term of an anxiety disorder, right? Because if it was something that the person actually wanted to do or felt connected to, they wouldn't feel anxious. So some intrusive thoughts new moms may have in that state of hyper anxiety, their hormones are off, they're exhausted, they're depleted, lending itself to mental health. Some scary intrusive thoughts new moms may have are things like contamination, right? Like fear that their baby is going to become contaminated in some way, or they're going to get sick, which may lend itself to these compulsions of, again, excessively washing things, excessively washing their hands, being super, super anal about anybody holding the baby or taking the baby outside. And again, being obsessive, right, in this type of fear. It may also look like the fear of a baby dying, right? Like new moms have this big, sometimes, again, for moms to experience this, can have like an obsessive fear of something happening to their baby to the point that they don't even want to sleep, or they don't even want to leave their baby's side. They may have the fear of dropping the baby. Some of these things are taboo, you guys, but I want you to stick with me and like understand like what's happening here on like a psychological level, right? The fear of dropping the baby, you could be like holding a baby and you have that scary thought, oh my gosh, what if I drop the baby, right? And then you freak out because you're like, where did that thought come from? I don't want to have that thought. The fear of hurting their baby, what if I hurt my baby? Or even just like scary images of something's happening to their baby. And for new moms, this is so terrifying, because what makes this a little bit more challenging than like generalized anxiety is that it centers around scary and taboo thoughts. So it's much more easy to say, to express to someone, I have this fear that I'm being a bad mom, or I have, you know what I mean? I'm feeling insecure about my new body. Like those are like palpable thoughts to say. To say, I just had the thought that I may drop my baby, and I keep having that thought over and over and over and over. That's terrifying. And so what's unfortunate is because people don't talk about this and people don't understand that this happens in the face of heightened senses of anxiety, is that people really don't understand what's happening, get scared to express it, and then this goes undiagnosed, unsupported, and untreated, which is really tough on you moms. So again, postpartum intrusive thoughts and OCD is very, very common. I have 3 friends who I went to school with, right, who are mothers now. And 2 out of 3 of those moms, when I was just talking about like, you know, educating on OCD and intrusive thoughts, were like, oh my goodness, that's what I was experiencing. And like one of them, she was telling me that she kept having this fear that she'd hurt her baby and it terrified her. And she went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist just, you know, put her on antidepressants, but never explained to her or normalized like, hey, you're experiencing intrusive thoughts. It's a form of OCD, which is an anxiety disorder. The reason why you're feeling so much anxiety is because you don't want to do this thing. And so the thought of you doing it obviously is terrifying you, and it's not indicative of your values. In fact, it's indicative of how much you care. That's why it's so terrifying, right? So I feel so passionate about expressing this because having spoken to my own friends who've experienced intrusive thoughts and the fear and shame and the fact that they never expressed it to anybody else because they didn't have an understanding for it, I don't wish that on any new moms. And so I want to say this, express this little like educational piece so that any of us that become new moms in the future, or if we have our loved ones who are new moms and we notice that, you know, they're really not doing too well or they're experiencing anxiety, we could pop in and ask, you know, like, and normalize, like, this may be an experience you may be having, and it's okay if you do. It's actually like, there's a word for it. And so I feel, again, really passionate about normalizing and bringing attention to the understanding of postpartum anxiety, and that one of the ways that could show up is intrusive thoughts. And lastly, in terms of treatments, I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. In terms of treatments, there is some overlap in terms of generalized anxiety treatment and OCD treatment. And so both generalized and OCD pairs very well with mindfulness, right? Like just that overall sense of support, bringing bringing a sense of calm and attention to what's happening in your body and being mindful is supportive to either one of those. A little distinction is that if you have intrusive thoughts and OCD rather than CBT, which goes really, cognitive behavioral therapy, which Alyssa stated, goes really well with general anxiety. Postpartum OCD does really well with what we call exposure prevention response. ERP, exposure response prevention. And that is where a therapist will actually have you move towards your fear. So if you have a fear of dropping the baby, they're going to tell you, go stand at the edge of these stairs with your baby and do that over and over again until you train your mind that this is just a fear, it's not real. So actually ERP takes you directly to your fear, which is terrifying, but that's the only way to kind of undo, right? Your brain hyping up that this may be a reality, which it's not, else you wouldn't feel so scared, right? So this is my little presentation on bringing awareness to this possible experience that new mamas may have. Thank you.
Wow, Chelsea, this knowledge was so rich. I have to agree with Reine in the comments, as you know, it's extremely insightful. And I really want to thank you for broadening that spectrum of what OCD is, because when we think OCD, we kind of go back to this TV show Monk, and you know, everything must line up and must be coordinated in a certain way, but not understanding that it really entails a lot more of that intrusive thoughts and different anxiety that would surround this type of thing. What would be your core advice? What can be a go-to tool for a mom? Because sometimes we in therapy and we may learn a lot of tools and we may forget some of these tools and you don't want to go in your book and go back and find these things. What is a go-to tool that may work for a number of persons who experience this postpartum anxiety or intrusive thoughts? What is something that is simple and quick and easy to pull in the recesses of their mind?
Got you. Definitely, I would say always, whether any type of anxiety or mental health, go to your basics: food, sleep, and just general self-care and support. So I would say whether it's general anxiety or OCD, like first take a look at your basics. How are your basics doing? And on these specifics with like OCD, if a person cannot access a therapist, because best case scenario, you would get like a therapist who specializes in this and who could walk you through ERP. I would say the second best thing specific to this, because there's so much shame embedded in intrusive thoughts, is to utilize the online community of other persons who share their experiences, because I think shame is the hardest part of this specific disorder. And so hearing from other people who've gone through it, or just their stories and the online communities that actually are global online community supports for OCD and intrusive thoughts, that is a really beautiful pairing to, again, normalize and like reduce any shame that a person may carry with this experience.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I have one more question for you, which is, I know Alyssa would have touched on acknowledging the emotion that you're feeling, and then also having compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
What's a practical way, or one or two practical ways of doing that? How can someone show compassion for themselves?
So I think pairing it with, again, that education that normalizes it, really going through. So full disclosure, everyone, I've experienced intrusive thoughts. The whole reason I know about this is because I was hit with it really hard, not postpartum, but with other themes. And that's what prompted my education with this. So like I have lived this, and it can be debilitating when it gets bad. And so for me, that online community was really supportive. And the second thing was, again, bringing back to like Alyssa's point, mindfulness that this thought right now is just a thought. This thought right now, right, means that I care so much about this. That's why it's a theme for my OCD. OCD attacks your values and the things you love, else it can't make you anxious, right? Like that's the whole function of it. That's the whole paradox of it. And so it's like bringing that mindfulness, right, to the educational standpoint that this is a function of OCD, and bringing mindfulness to the experience and self-compassion. Again, I wouldn't have these intense feelings if I did not care so much about this thing, right? So I would say education and mindfulness and compassion.
Thank you so much for that. I think also something that I really draw on two common themes when both presentations were done, especially this one. So in terms of normalizing the experience, it's not something that sometimes we go through something and we think it's just us alone, just us and our God or whoever, it's just like us and the spirits. But it really shows that these are normal human experiences. And it's about educating yourself, as you would have said, and finding the tools to be able to carry yourself through in a way that really enables self-care, and doesn't cause distress. Also looking at community. So, touching on, as Alyssa would have said, prepping the family, able to assist the mother, as well as even when you're bringing, as she would have given the example of bringing gifts for the baby shower, you bring something for the mom as well. So it shows to be those two things, normalizing and then accessing community, because sometimes we think that we do not have support, but if we only ask, if you would only reach out and say, hey, I need help, I'm going through this, you would find somebody might say, yeah, I went through the same thing and this is how I cope, or be able to refer you to a resource that can really help and bring value. So ladies, I really want to thank you all so much. I know Shanice is going to do a brief wrap up before we proceed, and probably ask you guys for some final thoughts.
Yes. So, one, thanks again to all of the persons that even came out to be a part of the session today. We are very humble and appreciative of your time. We know that you could have been doing a million other things this afternoon, but really as we go into Mother's Day, I think it's important that we do spend time to shine a light on the different ways that, mothers experience motherhood. And we all have different journeys, but it is so important that we really highlight ways that we can all help to build community around women in our lives, right? So I just wanted to, someone made a comment, thanks Chelsea. We wish that these other aspects were explained more, because things are normally just categorized as PPD, postpartum depression, but clearly there are other things on the spectrum to consider, right? And really that's what we're trying to do with this conversation, to shine a light on the ways that different women experience motherhood and different women experience this journey called life, right? One of the things that we would appreciate if you all could fill out a feedback form. I'm going to share it now in the chat. So if you all could, after we wrap up, we're wrapping up in like a few minutes, if you take a couple of minutes just to fill it out, so that one, we can make these sessions more informative and ensure that you all have the best experience with us, right? Also, I'd like to say thank you to our speakers. They were so insightful and so informative, bringing a wealth of knowledge to us. And I just want to call on Alyssa to see if she had any final thoughts. And Chelsea could also give her last 2 cents as well.
Hi, excellent presentation, Chelsea. It was informative to me as well. I think when we think about it as a whole, mothers need support. None of the issues facing mothers that we both discussed today is something that is easy to do alone. So I think if any mothers have a takeaway, get educated about your experience and then get the support that you need. Find a community.
Thank you, Alyssa. And I want to give a little acknowledgement for your holistic perspective. As a naturalist myself, I love the belly binding and the womb steaming and all of those like really age-old ways of like loving new moms that you brought back. And again, I think our two sessions were very complementary in terms of you giving a very umbrella perspective and then me dropping into very specific and nuanced things. But even with mine, your like my specific subject matter, yours really illuminates the, let's say, the bigger picture and all of those things that can support or help to buffer the experience of the possibility of OCD and intrusive thoughts. And so again, I would wrap up in saying that, and I think Alyssa and I both spoke on this, education is key. Education is key. Just like for me, before I knew what was happening to me, that created a form of suffering that education really helped to reduce. And so education, really building your bandwidth of knowledge around what this experience can entail, and not just for you, even like to love the mamas around us who are to come, right? So education and compassion in action, right? So as Alyssa said, showing up for new moms, acknowledging new moms, and so education, taking action, and compassion as an overall experience that we all get to gift mothers and ourselves.
Thank you so much, ladies. And just to wrap up on my end, in terms of Lauren, this is just the first installment of this series of mindfulness. And we would also be touching on a lot of different topics, right? We are also looking at mindful nutrition, mindful investing, mindful entrepreneurship, also mindful sexual health, right? So we have a lot of interesting topics coming along. We would share that information with you as it becomes available. So we would love for you all to participate in those other sessions as well. So I'll leave it off to Kimberly to close us out. As I said, don't forget there's the Google form in the chat as well.
Thanks, Shanice. This has been truly amazing. I think that is an understatement, you know, with the wealth of knowledge that we've had and more time, you know, we can look at expanding in our physical. So I know Shanice didn't mention it, but I'm going to mention it. We are actually planning a full day retreat later on in November. And we would love to expand on these topics some more. So if you'd like to experience more of what Chelsea would have explained, more of what Alyssa would have explained, or even meet them, because I know they come, or even meet them, you know, and have further conversation, please stay tuned for our in-person wellness full day retreat that we would be having. I know that it would be exceptional, and I'm very excited for it already. I would love to thank our speakers, Alyssa Moore, Chelsea de Mayak, for sharing their wealth of knowledge with us again today. It was truly something that, for me as someone who is not a mom as yet, it is good to know beforehand. You know, I saw Reine even commenting, and I know that, you know, she's set up for life here with this conversation. Yeah, and just to dive a little more in depth into it, and we're good to go, Reine. So also I'd love to thank the Lauren team, Shanice and I. Shanice has been truly a pillar, you know, for I'm not really a evening or nighttime type person to be up and working on stuff. And Shanice, you know, when she drags me. And it has been really well to see, you know, this is a fruit of our labor. This is a fruit of our labor. And I'm really pleased. I would love to also thank you all, the audience, for showing up today, for being present. For those of you who would have commented in the chat, thank you very much for your comments. And be sure, guys, to look out for more. As Shanice said, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Lauren.collective, Facebook as well, Lauren Collective, for more of the information that we will be bringing to you all. So thank you all so very much, Queens, and have a wonderful evening. Until next time.